Nima is a chief data scientist for Lava Map, leading the organization's efforts to disrupt the real estate industry with novel approaches to age-old problems. Nima is coordinating an effort that uses machine learning to push the frontier of infrastructure accountability, pricing theory, and sustainability within the real estate industry. He is also on the board of Cannabis BPO. Nima is a TED speaker who's trained at the Arts League of New York on 57th Street, George Washington University, Georgetown University, Columbia University, and the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. He has also competed internationally on the Olympic circuit for Taekwondo, really interesting, and his favorite time of day is astronomical twilight. Welcome, Nima.
Pleasure, Alex. It's very kind. So the, when we talk about data talks, most of the conversations start with, I think, from the wrong place, right? So just like, I'm sure very common in your small businesses, and in my own startup practice, the thing I always hear over and over again is know your client, right? So what I'd like to do is I'd actually like to start this off the bat with context. And I want to know that a small business is a very, very broad term. So I want one sentence from every person on this call. There's about 10 of us here. We do it really quickly. What is your small business? And what would you like data to do for you? And we'll start.
Hey, why don't I start, Nima?
Please, Tyler.
And we love to, and just to as reiterate what Alex said, we love to keep this just a discussion. My role here is to help you to have that discussion. You can always ask me anything you want. Everybody else, chip in as they go. So I love it. So for myself, I really want to be able to use data to provide feedback loops so I can learn what's actually working in my business and learn how that I can improve upon what I'm doing.
Excellent. Next, see Tom here. Is it two Toms?
Yeah, it's Tom with Abstract Development. So I do business development, lots of small businesses and startups. For me, what I'd really like to find is how to utilize data and new AI developments to seek out kind of the new service areas where we're going to see a lot of expanded growth and get ahead of the curve.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, Tom. Daniel?
Yeah, I'm a web developer. And what would be interesting for me to find out is what machine learning I can integrate into my projects and finding those type of projects to work on, I guess. So yeah. So not necessarily developing it, AI or machine learning, but using it in real world applications.
Very good. Alex, see here?
Sure. Hey, I would like to use data science so that I don't waste my time on stuff that isn't working.
Now, what kind of stuff do you try to do that you find may or may not work?
Marketing and sales.
Okay. So A/B and whatnot, all that testing.
Yeah.
Very good. Let's see what else. There's another Tom here.
Yeah, hi. I do consulting for various businesses, small, medium, and large, and just trying to figure out how I can best present the advantages of AI and large data, big data analytics to different businesses, ranging from I have small brick and mortar retail stores that are not really equipped to do much with data and trying to convince them to do whatever they can, to larger chain stores managed by local folks that have access to data but don't know what they're doing with it. So just coming up with better ways to explain the advantages to the different clients so that they can use what's going to be best for them, and overcoming a lot of the prejudices that their businesses aren't big enough to take advantage of anything.
Thank you for that. Who else here? Andrew?
Yeah, I jumped on late, so I'm not sure what we're doing. I just jumped on.
If you could dream up a way for data to be useful in what is your small business, and what's your data dream for it?
Well, my small business is a PR and communications firm, and I really don't know how to use data right now. So I guess I'm trying to learn and get a broad overview at this point.
Very fair. And thank you for that. Sean also sent me a message, so I imagine maybe he's not able to speak, so I'll read it. Sean O'Brien would like to use business intelligence at our company to evaluate and improve internal processes, cross-development, departmental relationships, and improving visibility of performance in real time instead of analyzing months later. I like that. Howard? I don't know if Howard can hear me.
Yeah, can you hear me?
You sound wonderful, Howard. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. I did not be participating in your call. And I'm delighted for Tyler's invitation. So I do marketing strategy for companies where numerical data, qualitative data is very relevant to evaluating results in different marketing channels, where we're getting traction, where we're getting results, meaning sales results, and utilizing different marketing channels. So in the world of marketing, data is extremely important to help guide decisions on how to allocate resources to different marketing channels. Thank you for inviting my input.
Of course. Appreciate it. Thank you for sharing. Eddie, you're on here too?
Hi, can you hear me?
You sound great, Eddie.
All right, well, I own a startup branding and design agency, and I would like to, gain a better understanding of data in order to expand my capabilities in terms of providing values to clients and in terms of data visualization and, gaining a better understanding of the competitive context.
It's totally fair. Appreciate it. So there's two more people to touch on. Justin, are you on here?
Yep. How you doing? This is Justin Blake. Hey, this is Justin Blake. I'm the principal owner for OEDM Group. We are a defense contractor that specializes in mission analytics as well as business process engineering and Lean Six Sigma. So I'll be looking to better utilize data from a overall revenue forecasting perspective of where our particular lines of service would be best to sell to public and private entities. Secondly, I would also be interested in how to better educate more so the public side of the fence on the benefits of data, given that 9 times out of 10 government institutions are non-revenue generating or operating on a non-revenue generating business model. So how do we put effective data then in front of them that doesn't necessarily correlate to cost savings or eliminating cost erosion and things of that nature?
Excellent, excellent. And then we have one more. I appreciate it. Thank you for sharing that, Justin.
You're welcome.
So we have a 301 number. I'm not sure out in.
Hi, my name is Kiki. Can you hear me?
Sound wonderful, Kiki.
Looks like I'm the only woman here, but I have an amazing clothing line, and I would like to know, one, who's buying from me so that I can, of course, duplicate that and figure out who my audience is and make more sales. And excuse me, I'm in the car, so.
No worries.
I hope it's not so loud.
No worries at all. Okay, that's so good. I think we covered everyone here. Is there someone in the Galaxy S8 here? Anyone else who might not have captured?
Nima, I'm just gonna join in here too. Just something I've just been curious about. I'd just like to know, what is it exactly that people are doing when they visit our website, and what are they looking at, and how can we best improve our website design or maybe the structure of it so that they are sent the right direction.
No worries at all. I wish I could. So we have about a half hour here, so I might have to check out at 4:15, but I'm going to try to push as far as I can. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to, throughout this conversation, I'm going to take the seemingly impossible task of taking all dozen responses and answering all of them throughout this conversation. And so what I'll do is, interestingly, what every one of you said is, there's two major themes. And these two major themes are staples of that are run through my entire career, which weirdly enough actually, is closer to 20 years than it is to 10 at this point. So let me start from the beginning and I'll go through it. But there's kind of two big jokes in data science and in the field that we're working in. And the first one is that which gets measured gets done. And I'm sure everyone's heard this at some point. But the point is, if you have measurement over something, and if you can name it and identify it, you have power over it. And the second thing that's really important to note is that, and this is really speaks to the themes that are going on today, because it's really cool actually hear small businesses talking about, we want to say, what can AI do? What can machine learning do? And I touch on this in my book that's coming out next month. We talk about that later. But more importantly, I want to focus on the specific use cases that we brought up here right now. So the big joke, so when I started in data science in my freshman year at MIT, the computer science lab, data science wasn't really a term. You have things like IoT. I'm not sure if people are familiar with the term IoT, or the Internet of Things. But it's basically your appliances plug into the wall and your appliances talk to your servers, and then you get all this information to make sure that your refrigerator is running correctly or no one's burglarizing your house while you're gone. And the most important theme to note over the last 20 years that I've seen, and applies to every single person on this call, is the decreasing cost of not only acquiring data, but using it. So when I first started developing my first patents in IoT and having refrigerators and water treatment systems talk to servers, this technology is extremely expensive and it's very hard to actually implement. However, in the last 5-10 years, we've seen a whole renaissance in machine learning and a whole renaissance in the way data is collected. And the lightning of these challenges are what make calls like this, set up by Alex and Tyler, entirely possible. Because we wouldn't have dreamed of talking about machine learning 3 years ago, if not 10, 20 years ago. And the most important point when trying to understand what kind of data you want, what I want you guys to think about right now, each of you, is go back to the question that you just enunciated out loud and hold that question in your mind. And then think to yourself, if you could dream of every way that you could measure someone or measure your client, what would you do? So I'm going to go through kind of the history of data science over the last 20 years in the context of every single person that's been speaking. So with data science in general, the big joke is that machine learning is done in Python, but artificial intelligence is done in PowerPoint. And the reason is because there's so many abstract concepts, so much mumbo jumbo that everyone uses, that a lot of it isn't actually creating the actionable results that you want. And you don't want to get lost in that shuffle. People are going to use a lot of bullshit, excuse my language, on what they're actually trying to sell you. But the important thing to know about what each of you bring to your enterprise is that machine learning and data analysis is completely useless without the human involved. Because unless there's a person there who can synthesize a new idea, which a computer cannot yet do, and understand the emotions behind a client and what's being measured, which a computer cannot do, you can't sell something. Because we all know here, especially startup founders, that when they're selling, they're not buying with their brain, they're buying with their heart. And the subtle trick about measurement and the subtle trick about data science that everyone seems to forget is that you're measuring, the challenge is you're measuring what they're doing with their heart, not what they're doing with their brain. And this has become much, much, much easier over the last 20 years. 20 years ago when I was working, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Amway, Alticor, the big joke is they've been around for 50 years, they sell soap door to door. But what most people don't realize is they have a huge international arm, and they basically consolidate. They create appliances all over the world. And as far as structuring this conversation, I'm going to try to do this initial part for 10 minutes, and then I want to dedicate the rest of the time, 10 minutes or so, to discussion. So back about 15, 20 years ago, in order to have a water treatment system that could collect data from its client, we had to actually install a Wi-Fi module that would then talk to a server, which would then, this was long before cloud, we actually create a whole server infrastructure, which would then talk to our servers and would then come to our databases, which would then talk to and ask whether or not this filter was broken, or the water treatment system needed a spare part, and then it would talk to FedEx, and then FedEx would ship a new filter in 2 days if you had a broken filter. All of that automated. So those are all the steps it took. There were 6 steps, all very expensive. And that sensor technology probably cost an additional $100 on the appliance. Nowadays, most appliances already have Wi-Fi built into them. And if you were to add a Wi-Fi capability and try to build a system out that would automatically order you a new filter when it broke, it costs less than $5 for a sensor, and then everything just goes up into the cloud, where everyone just talks to each other and it's done instantly. And over the last 10 years, the biggest 2 leaps over the last 20 years has been the reduction in hardware costs, which came 10 years ago, right? So now that's correlated to, and hardware costs are about how you interact with your client, because in the end, you're not sitting your client down like a therapist, bringing them in. You're watching their phones, right? Phones have become cheaper over the last 10 years. You're watching, their appliances, like all this. You have data that's being publicly uploaded about people's energy usages through their nests, right? So the biggest trend first is a reduction in how data is measured and how the cost of which it takes to acquire it, because we're basically giving it away through Facebook, Twitter, and all of our appliances. And it's very easy to collect now. But now, about 5 years ago, we finally hit a beautiful threshold where not only could we store a bunch of information and collect a lot of it, but we could process it. And people think Amazon is scary because everything we buy is from Amazon. But Amazon is not actually scary because they can compete with Walmart. Amazon is scary because what most people don't realize is that Amazon owns the entire internet. They quietly, about 10 years ago, started buying up all of these server farms everywhere in the world. And they are actually the largest owner of the pipelines that deliver your data everywhere. And now the question is what to do with it. What are we capable of now? What can we answer? So there are a lot of different toolkits that, I'll take a step back into my work. So right now, what I've been doing at Lava Map as the chief data scientist is they pushed me to basically compete with the Zillows and StreetEasy's of New York to offer a new perspective for data in real estate, so we can more accurately understand and identify what our client or how a house is valued and what kind of information they want. Now, 20 years ago, the only thing you knew about a house before trying to price it was your interest rate in the house, how many bedrooms it had, and how you're told it had, how many bathrooms it has, et cetera, and these features list. And then you try to estimate based on your intuition. However, now we have the opportunity to take pictures of the house and just run a machine learning model that can go through each of the pictures, estimate which of them correspond to different rooms, and then actually take that information, and instead of being told what the client sees, we actually see what the client sees and we interpret it ourselves. And that is the biggest really leap forward in data science, is that we don't have to actually ask the client what they're thinking, we just watch them. And this correlates into everything that's being done. So the two biggest things that I was hearing earlier, I mean, machine learning is a big concept in general, but the two biggest themes I was hearing were internal optimization, external optimization. And there's a large amount of opportunity in both of them. And the key difference between the two is how you're allowed to collect data and how much. So if you're collecting data internally, and let's say you want to do some internal processes, you know exactly what you could strap a sensor onto an employee and just watch them go all day, right? Amazon does that actually to optimize their warehouses. You can force your employees to tell you, what their times are, like what their productivity is, and that's very clear. It's easy to collect internal information, and we can go into optimizing about that later, and you can ask about that. But to set up this conversation, this discussion, the second one to think about is how do you deal with external clients? How do you measure someone who doesn't know they're being measured, right? And it's not doesn't know they're being measured in a creepy way. It's doesn't know they're being measured because you can't actually identify someone's true behavior and how they're going to actually act if you tell them you're watching them. They just have to assume that it's happening. So the two things I want to touch on quick, just to kind of open your minds up to it, are what are the kind of toolkits available right now, and how have they radically leapt forward over the next few years, and what do we hope to see in 10 years from now? So for example, if you want to if you want to do, one person mentioned, if you want to do A/B testing, right, and do it on your website. Before, what you had to do is about 10 years ago, you had to basically, if you want to do A/B testing, you'd create two completely separate sites, right, because you have two servers, and then you'd have to redirect people randomly to one site or the other. And then you'd see which landing page worked better. And then you would basically throw out one landing page. You have to log in, delete one landing page, and keep the other. And then you'd move on to your next test, right? Now, with technologies like Kubernetes and Docker, what you can do is you can actually deploy two sites at the same time automatically, and on the same server, and because it's all cloud now, so now you're seeing the hardware and software limitations disappearing. And if what you can do is you can have a competition, and you say if this particular website version A, hits 1,000 views before version B, then version B is just deleted and version A just assumes. And that's all automated now. That's one opportunity as far as interacting with your clients. Another one is like, what are you interested in trying to, like, are you trying to drive sales? Are you trying to drive the efficiency? And well, another instance we're talking about before is, like, I think actually Alex, you brought this up, is if you want to know how someone's working their site, right? I don't know if a lot of people have seen this, but there's actually mouse tracker applications, like little apps that you can see now and watch your client's mouse go over your screen and over the page, and you can see what they're looking at because their eye follows the mouse. So you're following the mouse, you can follow their eye. And that type of data is also extremely valuable. All right, so if you wanted, we could go.
Sorry, no. Isn't there some type of product, like service that does that kind of? It's called like heat maps, right? Or maybe create
There's a few of them.
Service.
There's about half a dozen now, but they're all based on the same type of JavaScript technology that can track your mouse. So but the real challenge now is how do you channel how do you distill your knowledge of the client and your knowledge in the business into something that is going to be competitive, right? So we can walk through some case studies. As an engineer, I appreciate a good case study. So if anyone wants to go first, I'd be curious. Based on that framework I just laid out on lowering costs of available technology, I'll have someone bring up a solution or a question, and I'll answer it as a solution. Or if you have any thoughts too.
I'm going to let anybody chime in here. If nobody wants to, I'm happy to do it.
You can go ahead and lead.
I'll try to keep them
I'm
about
sorry,
2 minutes.
I didn't understand the question. Can you repeat the question?
The question is, if you'd like what is the case study? Basically, I'm offering the opportunity right now to present what your specific case you're looking at, and I'll give you an overview of the technologies in 1 minute that you might, and one possible way to answer it, to kind of stimulate your mind into other future concepts. And of course, this call is not the end of this discussion. If you want to contact me and have follow-ups, feel free to reach out to Tyler and Alex, and this is, and we'll continue from there. But I want to get people in the mindset of how this type of, I want to walk people through their own case studies. I could always present my own case studies, but since I can answer them on the fly, we'll do it for you.
So,
go ahead.
So let's take advertising on Facebook, for instance. I know Facebook has all this A/B, I guess, case studies or tests like you talked about. How do I know exactly who's looking at my products so that I could duplicate that? Like I said, is that what
Very
you mean?
feasible. Yeah, it's certainly one way. So it depends on who and what you're talking about, right? So if by who you want to know exactly which individual client is working, then that you might have to require them to log in before they do that. If you're looking for breakdowns by demographics, that's also a powerful way in order to optimize like how not only who's buying from you, but how you want to ultimately target sales channels as well. So it really depends on what you have to be thinking about what type of login access or requirements you're providing to your site in order to do that kind of A/B testing, because it's a trade-off, right? If you make your site harder to log into, you've already authenticated your user and you have more detail about the individual, so you can get more intimate insights. However, on the flip side, there isn't if you're having a much smaller data set, a much smaller sample. But if you're just tracking every person that comes to your site through Google Analytics, for example, then it's possible that you would be able to that you'd have a whole different data set, right? So it's really about the type of questions you want to answer and what you're looking at.
So also, so I do web development, and when you're talking about tracking your users, Google Analytics is a really good tool with that. I integrate that in a lot of my websites, and just right off the bat, it'll tell you your demographic, the location, which page they visited, and that's just right off the bat when you integrate it. And then there's authentication. That's also a really popular one by Google. It's called Firebase, and that even tracks much more detail. But it's really good when you have thousands of users using it, of course. And to get to that point, there's other strategies, but really depends on the traffic of your site. But it's very easy to do what you guys are asking for, and it comes right out of the box if you have it set up correct. And yeah, if you guys would like to know more about that, I would be happy to answer that. But those are pretty easy things. I don't want to get too distracted here.
Yeah, and actually you bring up a really good point, Daniel. And that the important thing to note is that most of this stuff is right out of the box, right? You can have a whole machine learning model out of the box. You can have artificial intelligence out of the box. You can run a regression model and any sort of A/B testing out of the box, right? The key now are these conversations that help you narrow down the toolkit you want to use and how you're going to apply that in the context of your specialized like client know-how and business intelligence. Right? And that's a really important thing. All these tools are online, all these tools are free, and all these tools are available. Right?
Yeah,
the trick is now.
So I have a case study for you.
It's all free to get started, but it gets tricky once you get a lot. Sorry.
Hello? Hey, so how are you doing? This is Justin Blake.
Here. Hi, Justin.
So how about a scenario where you're using behavioral data to where decisions need to be made, say buy or sell, go, no go type of deal. But you have, and again, this is all predicated off of selling services, right? So from a budgeting or revenue forecasting perspective. But you also have these things called procurement schedules that give you sort of a rough estimate of based off historical values where money has been spent in given lines of service and what's projected out. Is that a good scenario? Can you think around a scenario of how you can take where key decisions have been made in the past on a subset of or a set of decisions related to revenue or spending against a forecast, a procurement forecast?
Okay, so
does that make sense?
That's it. It kind of might. To get more context, I'd be curious in what type of product market are you referring to typically?
All right, so let's say I'm doing business with the federal government. All right.
Sure.
So I can see what the government has. Anybody can what the government has spent their money on, right? It could be widgets, it could be services, project management, down to installing toilets, right? All the whole caboodle. They also put out these things called procurement forecasts, which give you an idea of what they're looking to spend their next fiscal budget on moving forward, right? So what will be a solid or somewhat solid solution to use to do a comparative analysis of what they have spent their money on over an historical time frame duration of X against what they're projecting to spend their money on?
Well, that's a fantastic question. And that's obviously $1 trillion question. But the trick is, the main point of this call, and I'm going to answer that, but the most important thing to think about is and I'm going to ask you this, what is the competitive advantage that you bring to the table in these conversations?
Oh, you're asking me that?
I am.
Oh, so now that gives me and my team situational awareness on where to direct an array of things. 1, marketing campaigns, right? 2, where should we be driving our business development capture dollars on, expenditures related to actually trying to capture work.
Pause 1 second. So this is a really important thing that, even judging by the tone of everyone in this conversation when I asked off the bat, I want you guys to remember, you guys are in business because before there were computers, before there was ever machine learning, and this is the one thing as a data scientist I emphasize to every business I work with, before there was machine learning, before there was Microsoft Excel, you would still have been successful because you have a specific competitive advantage. You can see something, you have an edge that it could be intuition, it could be how you grew up, it could be an education. And everything else is just a tool, right? And when we start getting lost in the tools, right, we forget about our competitive edge, which actually enabled us. Right? Because one of the best favorite jokes about data scientists is that when you're holding a hammer, everything looks like a nail, right? So my question is, if there's no machine learning, if there's no analysis, what do you do in your sector and in your industry that makes you better than enough people in order to have a sustainable business?
So that simply put is the actual service delivery of said services. The way we go about doing the job and installing confidence in the job will be done when you work with my firm. The reason why I bring that question is because it's not necessarily of wanting to leverage tools too aggressively. It's all about doing the most with the least amount of overhead and manpower from a G&A perspective, right? So what things are out there that where I can do a job where a job normally takes 5 people to do the same level of administrative work and analysis down to 2 people. So that's kind of sort of where my brain's at.
Okay, so there's a short answer long answer. So what I'm understanding is it's 2 different questions, right? Are you trying to sell with less people, or are you trying to sell more dollars?
So I'm trying to sell with less people, correct.
Okay, so that type of data analysis, okay, this is good, right? So now you got to think of the result you're looking for. So you're looking to use technology and data science to leverage a smaller team in order to reach the same number of clients. Right?
Or at least exposure to the same amount, correct.
Okay, so what you're looking for at that point is a type of optimization. Do you guys use a CRM? Is everyone familiar with a client?
Correct. Yes, I'm using. I have a very essential level of Salesforce at the current moment. So the basic Salesforce. Yeah.
Right. So this is a big part of data science right now has been really just understanding where's most of your revenue coming from. And there's another issue, and the one thing I would take away from this conversation in your context is to think of the Pareto principle. And what the Pareto principle is, commonly known as is the 80-20 rule. So 80% of your revenue, 80% of your dollars will come from 20% of your clients. And I'm sure if you guys look at your books, a lot of that you'll notice, well, this is true. So the point is that if you're trying to hyper-focus on the clients that are going to bring you the richest amount of revenue, then you need to start optimizing in terms of who's your basket, who's the biggest bundles in your basket, and ultimately, this is one important thing in data science we're realizing is it's okay to fire your client, right? if you're emotionally attached, like, and having a data analysis will give you an emotional detachment when making these types of decisions. And typically in the past, when you wanted to work with a client, or it's always very emotionally upfront. You would never fire a client. Now, if one client is costing you, 50% of your time, you're more than welcome to sever that relationship, right? And there's certain toolkits that you have to leverage. And one of the things that you want to know is, as you're using that CRM, you want to find the best people who are good at using CRM, right? And this answer sounds obvious because there's really no way around it, right? Because you're using less people to try to do more, right? That's the dream, and there's no way around that. The only thing that really advances what you do is the amount of intelligence you're willing to put behind it, and the type of business you want to focus on, and what those types of clients look like and how well you know them. And in your case, I would use toolkits to try to figure out where the 80% of your revenue is coming from and fire the rest of your clients, if that's what you really want to do. Does that make sense?
Okay. That actually makes sense more than okay. That actually does make sense. All right. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, think about that. If you have a follow-up.
I know we only got a couple more minutes here, but I think Tom has his hand up. I think that's our last question we'll be able to take here.
Oh, please.
I would like to ask a quick question, but I could wait.
Yeah, let's give.
I can take at least. I do 3 more quick. I can call it. But here, Tom, quickly, and then I'll give Daniel, and then 1 more.
All right, thanks. Yeah, so my question spoke to the bridge, like you were talking about the skills and the tools that have been used, the basic skills that people have to begin with. For example, I have a client that runs a brick and mortar retail store, and he's the owner. He's been working for 4 years, running the same store for 4 years, and he has all of this data and knowledge in his head. When customers walk in, he recognizes customers, he knows their purchase history, he knows how much he can try to sell them. All that great knowledge. And when he has to take a day off, and like right now I'm trying to advise him, he wants to open a new business, but in order to open a new business, he has to step away from the one he's running. And there's no way to replace him. So how far away are we from being able to use information and data to successfully put someone in his place? And obviously we can't transfer 100% of the institutional knowledge and customer history he has, but some way to be able to categorize and instantly see, without violating privacy, what kinds of customers are likely to purchase, $5 customers versus $500 customers, being able to recognize the difference between the two. And based on data that is the store's currently in his head, but turn it into store data that can be available to new employees. They would be able to then see, oh, okay, this is a cheap customer, this is a good customer, this is a whale. How would they be able to get that knowledge and do that using technology now?
No, it's a fantastic question. And that's actually, Tom, you hit on something that's actually extremely sensitive, in the sense that, like, a client I'm dealing with right now, highly regulated. What we've had to explain to them is that you're only actually legally allowed to keep certain amounts of data and certain types of data. For example, it's illegal to actually to monitor someone's, and try to guess someone's ethnicity and record that, right? So the shorter answer is that right now, I think what type of data isn't already being stored in sales records that you would like to be able to have very explicitly?
Explicitly, purchase history. Like I can look at the inventory lists and run data off of general trends over a month-to-month basis, how much of X is sold, how much of Y is sold, but I have no way to tie.
Do you have a member program? Do you have a members program?
No, not yet. And
I would highly recommend that.
That's one thing. However, the nature is such that most customers aren't going to be interested in signing up for any program unless you incentivize the hell out of it.
Well, but that's true of all data now, right? Most data that's being collected, especially in A/B testing, are either coupon related. Actually, all A/B testing started out being coupon related. So that hasn't changed in 100 years. In Sears Robot Catalog, up until today, there's no way around that, Tom. And it's just changed hands and changed forms. But let me throw one out here for you, right? So what you could do, and this is in the wacky world we live in, is you have someone sign up, right? Just say like, hey, we're going to give you monthly, you'll get first preview on the product. Or, you know, if a new shipment comes in something, here it is. And once you have their email address, and this is the scary thing about the cloud, is that you can actually use that email address to go into the Facebook API. And you can say, hey, does this person, you know, what do they look like? What are they up on Facebook? What are their details? And you can collect information about them. Typically, what you can also do in incentivizing is just, instead of asking for the email, just ask them to sign up to your Facebook page. Just like it. Just like, that's it. Click that button, and then you have all their information. And then once you have that, you can instantly track it against their sales history. So now you know what kind of person they are, where they live, what their birthday is, and everything else that Facebook has to offer. And you combine that with everything they've ever bought, you know who they are. And you don't even ask, you don't have to ask. You know based on their email address or their Facebook profile that you have all that information. So I'm curious if there's anything else that might be missing, that might be in the gentleman's head that might be missing from Facebook being linked to the sales history. Is there?
There is, I think, because there's a lot of people who are not the same person online as they are in real life. A real life person might walk into, like, for example, this particular store is a smoke shop, sells cigars and stuff like that. And these people might come in and they might talk extensively about their knowledge of cigars with the salesperson, but when they go to work, they don't want anyone to know they're smoking. So they don't post anything about that on Facebook or anything.
Sorry, 1 second. Actually, you're right. Actually, I ran over. No, but let me answer this one first before I go. So the important thing to really note about, and this is actually, you brought up an extremely good point, is that people vote with their dollars, right? And there's two really important sides of this coin. Internally and personally, people will always tell the truth with their dollars, right? And they were, people vote with their wallets. And that's the very first thing about the truth that you're trying to collect. And you're thinking in your own mind, how do I connect that with the person they are online? And the really important thing to be thinking about in data science is that truth is relative. That's true of all economics. You know, liars figures and figures lie. And we are in a space where when someone makes a transaction, that is a true reflection of their essence, even if their online presence isn't. However, the important thing to note, and this idea of using proxies and instruments, even though someone might misrepresent themselves online, that can still correlate to a sale. And more importantly, when you're actually advertising to new clients, you are advertising to other people's fake presences, right? So truth is in, people vote with their dollars, right? People will talk all day, but where people put their money is always going to be true. And the way people also project their own online presence is correlated to is correlated across the board, right? So with a large enough sample size, you're going to find out that everyone acts the same. You just have to figure out what you're trying to target. So don't be afraid about the people who, you know, misrepresent themselves one way or another, because knowing your client, both how they actually are and how they project themselves, are both two halves of knowing your client. And they are, you shouldn't really, don't even overthink it, honestly, because these details are everything is important. And truth, something can be very accurate when it comes to truth, and something can be less accurate. But the nice thing about AI and machine learning models that's been happening now is that, and I'll give a quick 30-second view of how the machine model works, is that it basically, it just crawls and it looks what the next step is, and it crawls closer. It's just a little crawling device that tries to figure out where your graph is going to give you the best effect, or where like you're going to likely see the most increase in some sort of metric that's involved in sales. And the point is, everything about someone tells something about them, even if it's a projection. And I wouldn't worry about believing, like use your kernel of knowledge and your ability to understand details about the client as a starting point, but don't assume that you know everything about that client that might be valuable, right? The most important thing about data is just to collect as much of it as possible at all times. Have your Google Analytics going with your mouse tracker, with some A/B testing, and having a whole pool of data, right? And actually a big thing in this last year, I'll leave you with this, is this idea of keeping a data lake, right? And this is actually something I would encourage. This is the best. If there's one takeaway from every single person here, then if there's one thing I can tell every single person here, and this is the biggest transaction, it doesn't matter how, if you're a small company or if you're Microsoft or Amazon, every single company now has something in the last 12 months called a data lake. And for you on your personal computer, it could just be a folder where every CSV file you've ever had is there, every receipt's ever been stored, every transaction's ever been laid. And you need just to compile all of that, because you don't know when it's going to be useful, right? And if you assume walking into a situation that everything you know about a business is relevant to, I only need to know someone's hair color and, and what color their shoes are, right? And I can tell everything about them. And maybe you could, at one point. But you need to collect their height, you need to collect their gender, you need to collect what they've purchased, you need to collect what time of year they purchase it. And you don't know. The most important thing about machine learning is that you don't want to be caught off guard by unknown unknowns, right? And that is the most important thing about data science right now. And the only way to remedy that is to just collect as much data as possible and keep it in a data lake. And you can hand it to a consultant, you can hand it to someone you hire, but having that information in place and having that history is going to be critical for every business moving into the future. So
yeah, I think
actually jump off.
Well, Daniel, sorry, Nima's gonna have to jump off here. So hey, thank you so much, Nima, for coming on. We really appreciate it and coming on and sharing your knowledge with the greater audience. So thank you so much.
I appreciate it. And to answer Sean's question, the book will be available this month. I'll send the link out. And honestly, if anyone has questions, please talk to Alex. And these questions are going for hours. So you feel free to send me an email, get in touch, and we'll go from there. Thank you for having me. I know it was a bit of a tour de force, and it jumped around a little bit, but I'm really glad that I learned more by listening than I do talking, and you guys asked me questions I never thought to ask myself. So I'm grateful for that opportunity as well, guys.
Awesome.
Everyone on this call. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. All right, see you, Nima. And for the rest of you, thank you guys so much for coming. That this is our second edition, and I think it's gone really well today, especially with Nima being on here. And we look forward to you guys showing up at the next one. We've got one coming up every week this month, 3:30, same time, same place. You can actually use the same link as well. So feel free to join in on those if you have any other questions. If you have a knowledge or expertise that you would like to share, just get in touch with us, and we'll see if we can talk to you about that and see if we can set something up. So great to see you all, and happy Friday. And if anybody has any questions, I'll hang out for a couple more minutes. Otherwise, yeah, go ahead. Was there a question?
I just want to say thanks, Tyler and Alex, for running this and putting it together.
Hey, no problem. Anytime. We're doing this to help ourselves as well as everybody else. So it's our belief that in small business it's really hard because you have to do everything yourself. So if we can come together as small business owners, we can really share in that knowledge and expand what we're doing all together. So thanks.
Yeah, I think.
Tyler,
Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
yeah, I was going to ask if you were still there. Why don't you ask your question? Because mine isn't really a question. It's more like how I can connect and get some more information, because I have learned a lot today.
Awesome, great. Glad to hear it. And any feedback anybody wants to provide, we'd love to hear it as well. Like good, bad, anything we can do better, anything that we should keep doing as well.
Okay.
So, I feel like we're talking about marketing a lot today. And if you guys need help tracking users, working with Salesforce, I'm sorry, I kind of got at a loss of words here.
Sure.
But I think we talked a lot about marketing today and not so much about data science. I was really curious, like a good use case for using data science and even a good use case for small businesses. And I think to do that, you need users. You need, I can think in terms of a website. So you need users to come to your website. And you have to get to that point where you have enough users to actually have enough data to start tracking them. And then when you do, my question is like, how far can you go with machine learning? Like, what's the minimum set of data you can use to, actually produce some results? And I'm really good at, with the web development and tracking users. There's definitely Google Analytics. There's many different ways that are right out of the box. Authentication to learn the demographic, the age, the location. And I do that fairly simple with websites. But yeah, I don't want to get off the original question. But.
Yeah, no, I think we lost our expert here, but if you would like to follow up with Nima and ask those questions specifically, feel free to shoot Alex an email and we'll make sure we connect you as well.
Okay, yeah.
Because I wouldn't have an answer for you there.
Yeah, Daniel, I can help you connect to Nima, no problem, and just direct any questions over. Make sure you guys get connected.
And any other questions before we pop off here? Any other feedback?
I would also like to get connected to Nima, please.
Great. Yeah,
because like I said, I just, he blew my mind with the whole Facebook. I mean, I know Facebook is supposed to have all of our information, but I just am astounded at how they can use that information.
Yeah, I can help with Facebook as well. Especially when it comes to integrating into your website. And
cool. Well, I think that would be something that everybody would probably be interested in. So we'd love to maybe we can talk about that as a group at some point as well.
Yeah, I would love that.
Awesome.
And Danielle, is it okay if I get your contact?
Yes.
Maybe email or?
Yeah. Maybe after this call, I can
send a private message as well.
Alex can help with contact information, I think, maybe.
And
all right. Well, I'm the Samsung S8. I'm not sure how to send a message to you, but that's I'm.
Got it. What was your name, and we can pass it along.
My name is Kiki.
Okay. All right. Any other questions out there?
Yeah, this is Tom. I guess first I just want to say thank you to Tyler and Alex for putting this together. It's always great to get some like-minded people, even if it's just time to think. But it would be nice if maybe Nima could put together a short list of recommended AI toolkits. We had talked a lot about some of the free ones that are available, but even just a quick blast of like, hey, here's what's out there, so that us as a group can have a list.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll try to get them to put something like that together and send that out to the whole group. I don't know if you're part of the business owner discussion group on LinkedIn, but we can always post that there as well, so you have access to that.
Yeah, that would be wonderful.
Awesome.
Hey guys, I gotta go. Thanks for everything. Thanks for the talk. My computer's gonna die. Thanks.
All right. Take care, Daniel. Thanks for coming. All right. Anything else? Otherwise, we'll wrap up here.
Nope. Thanks for the talk, guys.
Thank you.
Awesome. All right. Well, hey, happy Friday, everybody. And we look forward to seeing you next week. Take care.
Take care.